generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we have the conclusion of the Ahsoka Star Wars show on Disney+. We get to talk about what happened in this finale. Did it live up to the hype? And what our thoughts are on the episode. There's definitely, some answers here for some questions we had in the past, but there's, again, probably more questions than answers. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to discuss what happened in the episode, and then obviously give our own thoughts. And then it's up to you whether you want to go ahead and watch it. So
let's
I
be
guess
real. They probably watched it first, and now they're here.
Probably. I hope so, because you don't want to just spoil the finale for yourself. But
they're just gonna get the whole thing,
yeah,
dropped. Otherwise, that's your warning. Get out of here.
Yep. So what happens in this episode? Well, we should talk about where we kind of left off. The last episode, we had a little scuffle with, Ahsoka, Ezra, and Shin. Baylan was kind of in the mix too. But by the end of it, Baylan kind of went off on his own, and Shin went off on her own. And it was kind of like a race against time for Ahsoka and the group to figure out a way to get off this planet. And we also know that Thrawn was very, very close to having everything loaded up on his ship, hence the loading bar that we saw in the episode. And then, now we're here. We were waiting to see how exactly do they get off the planet, if they do, and then who makes it off and who doesn't. Because we get a split in this episode. So I think, trying to remember how this episode even started. I think it was with the witches, right?
Yeah, we see I think we start off with Morgan. She lets them know that they're almost done loading everything.
Yeah, and then we get like this special little ceremony for Morgan. We all know that Morgan is a Night Sister, but she definitely looks a little different than the others, the ones that were here on the planet already. With Thrawn. And so they have like this small little ceremony, I guess, where she commits herself to the ways of the Night Sisters. So maybe she was kind of maybe it's like the difference between, if we put it in perspective for religions in our own world, maybe this is kind of the difference between, being a Christian and then being baptized, kind of a thing. Baptized is that next step of being part of the culture. Maybe that's what this is for Morgan. She even gets a full-on transformation. They go up to her, grab her face and burn their fingerprints into her face. Seems to be at least a little bit painful, based on her minor screams. You look like you're trying to say something.
Does Mother Talzin sound familiar to you guys from the Clone Wars?
Yep.
Well, I didn't remember it. I had to look up. I know where you're going with this. But it sounds like Austin remembers. So do you want to cover that real quick?
Yeah, of course. This scene is really spooky. Yeah, they tell Morgan that because of all her hard work to help accomplish this mission, they have a reward for her, and the reward is whatever shadows of Dathomir or something. They tell her they have some shadows for her, and like you said, she's got some transformation going on, which starts with magic being kind of burned into her head. Does not look very comfortable, but at the same time, she didn't look that bothered by it either. I think she was just ready for it, I guess.
I was
Um,
expecting like screams of agony.
yeah, she could have sold it a little bit more.
Maybe it was kind of a monk thing because isn't it something where like monks get burned or something and then they just don't, react
Yeah,
to
that
it?
could be because they did ask her for consent. They asked her if she was ready for it. She said yes. So,
Maybe it's like a religious thing and she just
mhm,
took it.
yeah. But with her new look, she also gets a brand new fancy blade um, with magic aura emanating from it. It's got the same green magic that we've seen, uh, kind of aura about the Night Sisters. And I think they straight up name drop it as like the Blade of Talzin or something like that,
They do. Yep.
which is a throwback to the Clone Wars, to the Night Sister Mother Talzin, who she's in, I don't know, probably like a bunch of episodes, at least like 3 or 4.
She the one that brought back Maul?
Yes.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense. I remember there were some episodes where she like I think we actually talked about this in a previous episode. There was like a weapon that the witches had that could, go up against a lightsaber from the Clone Wars, and I guess that's what this was.
Yeah. Um, so, uh,
The other thing that Thrawn does during this time is he sends out a couple TIE fighters to go attack Ahsoka.
oh yeah, he's trying to keep her busy. Little game of cat and mouse here, kind of, sort of.
He's successful. I mean, the TIE fighters go out there, they find him. The TIE fighters blast Ahsoka's ship for a bit and basically makes it kind of unstable. And so Ahsoka and Ezra hop down to use the Force to hold it up. So the little like turtle looking dudes can get out from underneath with their 1 mile per hour speed with those big vehicles. Um, but while that's happening on the inside, Sabine and a couple of those dudes and Huyang are trying to fix the ship so that they can, you know, do something about these TIE fighters. And eventually they do. They make it basically just enough to get it over with. They actually don't blast the TIE fighters, they actually just run straight into them, which was an interesting choice. It happened to be just the right size there to go and clip them.
Yeah,
Which
she shot the gap.
yeah, and then destroyed them, and then Sabine ended up crashing the ship itself. They did not repair it enough at that point to be able to actually use it and potentially fly, either to Thrawn or hopefully out of this planet. Not yet,
Yeah, they probably did, way more damage to the ship now that it's crashed a second time.
right? But
Uh,
we've definitely seen in some recent Star Wars stuff that crashing a ship like that doesn't necessarily mean it's toast. I mean,
yeah.
hence the Millennium Falcon and the Force Awakens when they just crashed through a bunch of trees.
Yep. Those starships are built tough.
Yeah. um. So they crash land. Ahsoka and them still need to go and get to Thrawn. So they use their, I forget what they're called. They're the wolf-looking things. They
Before they
ride.
head out, there
What's
was
that?
one thing that before they head out, there was one thing Austin was really excited about with Ezra.
Yeah, there was one thing.
Oh yeah, yep.
Morgan Elsbeth is not the only one who gets a new weapon this episode. Ezra finds his way onto the ship, and um, with all the lightsaber parts and with a little assistance from Hu Yang, not only assistance, he has a specific part that ends up being the same part that he gave to Ezra's master, Kanan, way back when he built his lightsaber. He gave Ezra the same part for the new lightsaber that he just built this episode, which was a really nice, callback to that. Um, and they had a little moment and everything. But yeah, Ezra's got a new blue lightsaber, so um, we do get to see him use that later this episode, which is great. But yeah, he goes out on the wing and finds Sabine and Ahsoka having a heart to heart, and that's when the TIE fighters swoop in. But yeah, that goes south pretty quickly, and then we found out that they still have the horse anteater. What are these things?
I don't
Howlers.
know
That's what they call them.
what they call them.
Was it like a howler or
I
did I
believe
make that
so,
up?
yeah.
Sounds
Okay,
good to me.
I might have made it up, but
Uh,
This site that I'm on, just for comparison of notes, calls them howlers.
oh, okay, perfect. They're probably called that then.
One
I
thing I
know
thought,
it's yeah,
what I thought was interesting about the lightsaber stuff with Ezra, um, so it means something with what color you have for your lightsaber. It
yeah,
kind of, projects to others what kind of Jedi you are. And so it's interesting to see that, Ezra first started with a blue one, and then he went to green. That's when he was more of an aggressor, dealing with Maul and stuff. And now he's back to blue. Now, I don't know if maybe they just had only a blue one on the ship available. Like maybe that was somebody else's crystal from before. Um, but I mean, they could have picked any color that would have been on that ship. So I think it might have some sort of significance, because he definitely doesn't seem as aggressive as the last time we saw him in Rebels. So I think he kind of has a little bit of a turn there.
yeah. He's definitely on like the side of well, even on the ship, right? He makes the choice to the smart choice. I mean, I'm cutting right to the end here, but um, he doesn't try to like sabotage the ship once he sneaks onto it, right? He just gets out of there. So maybe this is like a new path for him, where not a new path, but he's just more reserved. He's grown up, He's not as bullish as he was in Rebels, which
Right.
I kind of like.
Yeah. So let's find out how we actually get to the ship. So they're
Yes.
riding these, you said howlers?
Yep.
So they're riding these howlers, they're charging towards basically that big temple looking thing that the Night Sisters are taking their stuff out of. Thrawn does try to blast them, with the Star Destroyer, but they happen to miss every single time. Um, I kind of wondered if maybe at the end, maybe one of the howlers would have gotten hit and they would have flown off of, the thing, but uh, Ahsoka calls to Ezra to help open the door, and then she tells Sabine to do the same, and then Ahsoka does too. So I thought it was interesting that she yelled to Sabine to try it out, just to be part of the group, because she did not, help hold the ship up earlier. It was just Ahsoka and Ezra. So here it sounded like Ahsoka is trying to, just force Sabine into trying to use her force powers. We actually see a couple of times in this episode where I feel like they kind of throw Sabine in the deep end as opposed to, move this teacup like she was doing the very beginning of the show. So she does partake in the opening of the door, and they all make it in. And then we get a pretty interesting set piece here. So one of the things we had talked about in the past is, what's going on with these stormtroopers. And so as they're, approaching the temple, Thrawn is gathering what troopers he has that I think said they were volunteers. But I think Morgan also said like everybody would volunteer for you. So I think this is their uh, everybody, so to speak. And so they send them all down there, and our three heroes are met by these stormtroopers. They all duke it out. The picture behind Sarah there is like the final shot of the little skirmish, where Ahsoka looks awesome. And then we get what we had thought might happen at some point right after. So it looks like Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka like slaughtered all these stormtroopers, and then the Night Sisters use their magic to bring them back, which was kind of foreshadowed because when they tell the stormtroopers that they're going down there to meet these dudes, they're like, the Night Sisters will watch over you, kind of a thing. You'll be okay, and they kind of are, but they turn into essentially zombies once they are rejuvenated, which is a callback to the photo I have which is the cover of one of the old books before Disney ever bought Star Wars, which was called Death Troopers, which referred to zombified type stormtroopers. So this was kind of a callback to that novel from back when.
Yeah, I thought that whole scene with the room was really cool. Um, this is basically, I mean, in the Clone Wars TV show, you would just see the Jedi just go ham on all the droids because they were droids and they could. This is not the same because those are live actors in those suits, so they can't, dismember them as easily as droids. But um, they still kind of go ham on all these guards in the room, take them out super easy, no problem at all. And then, like you were saying, they all come right back, and then they're like, "Well, this is going to be a problem." So they start marching up the stairs. What else? Oh, the only other thing in that fight, I liked how they all kind of, yeah, they spread out, they work together. Ezra and Ahsoka both are kind of force pushing and pulling here and there in the fight to kind of help each other out and help Sabine. And Sabine's having a little bit of trouble blocking all the fire at first. Luckily, she is in her Beskar armor, so that absorbs all the shots every time. They never hit him in the gap. Um, but Ahsoka wisely calls out for her to just like take cover behind them and just start blasting away.
Yeah,
Anyway, so then she started blasting. So
little plug in there.
yeah.
I liked that too, that she basically said, like, you're not doing so hot, just do what you're good at, kind of a thing.
Yep.
So yeah, then they're chased up the stairs. They are slicing the panels on the doors to try to stop them. They do get ambushed from a different side door at one point, but they take care of them pretty quickly. And so they're basically making their way all the way towards the top of this little temple thing. They do eventually meet up with Morgan. Morgan was sent down there by Thrawn to try to hold them off a little bit. And so Ahsoka decides to take on Morgan while Ezra and Sabine head towards the very, very top. Well, where all the good stuff's happening.
Round 2.
Yeah,
Round 1
2
was in Mando, way back when.
Yeah, and this fight, in my opinion, was probably one of the better fights as of late. I felt like the choreography was great and the speed was crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was really good. The the fight is all going down in the room, and then Ezra and Sabine go up to the top of the tower to see if they can stop Thrawn's ship or get on Thrawn's ship or something. But they actually end up in their own fight. They get ambushed as soon as they get to the roof by
Yeah,
a couple of they're the same sort of troopers, but they're a little bit, they
they're
seem like a
beefy.
more advanced one. Yeah.
Yeah. They're very strong. And they're I think they're a little taller too. They seemed towering compared to our heroes. So yeah, they get in a little scuffle there. Thrawn I believe Thrawn is probably on the bridge of the Eye of Sion at this point. And to also fill in a little small thing, we had talked about in a previous discussion about Ahsoka, how we thought that maybe the ship will attach. We were correct. They were little claw things that come out of the Eye of Sion, just like the Jedi ship from the prequel trilogy.
Wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, there's your poetic callback stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sabine and Ezra are they're getting their butts kicked by these stormtroopers, and what essentially ends up happening is that Sabine breaks a piece of one of the helmets of the stormtroopers, the one that she's fighting with, and her lightsaber was knocked out of her hand. And so, as she's being choked out by this stormtrooper. She's trying her best to reach out with the Force to see if she can actually, you know, pull that little teacup symbolically with the lightsaber. And she eventually does. She gets that lightsaber pulled right to her hand.
Also, this is where we kind of get this is where we really get to see one of those troopers, with part of their mask removed for the first time. So we kind of see what's going on underneath.
It reminded me of like Deadpool or Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, or like a burn victim or something. They were not looking good. Not quite zombie, but they were not looking good. But definitely making like zombie sounds. Like they weren't making words at all. It was just ah, and the jaw was moving. So it definitely gave zombie vibes. So I think that's what they were going for. So that part was cool. But yeah, she trusts in the Force, and sure enough, Sabine, she does it. Gets that green lightsaber, goes for the quick head injury, headshot. Down he goes.
It gave me
Zombie or no zombie.
It gave me the same vibe of when Rey threw her lightsaber to Kylo and he did like the quick turn it on, turned it off.
Yep. It reminded me exactly of that.
And then
which I also liked.
What was
Sabine and Ezra? They eventually get the upper hand. Once Sabine's able to take out her adversary, she gives Ezra a little bit of cover, and then he kind of beheads the other guy. So those two are done and dusted. Ahsoka and Morgan, however, on the other hand, they're kind of more evenly matched. And eventually all those troopers make it up to that floor, and they give Morgan a little backup.
Well, Morgan ends up chopping one of Ahsoka's lightsabers, the hilt, just chops it right in half with her sword. Because you can chop the blade, but you can chop the hilt.
Yep. So now she's down to one. So it's one sword on one sword now. So they work their way up to the roof, and then Ezra and Sabine still want to try and stop Thrawn's ship. But that puppy's pulling away from the dock. It's leaving. So they have a crazy bad idea, and it ends up kind of working. Their idea is that they're going to do a force jump and a force push. Well, mainly Sabine is going to be doing the force push. But I guess she's feeling pretty good after she just snatched that lightsaber up. So
I was surprised that Ezra wasn't more enthusiastic about this because it was a very far jump. But I remember in Rebels, he did that a handful of times where it was his idea of just throw me across,
And he was the one with the force that would,
Well, maybe Ezra was, I don't know about you guys, but maybe he was kind of like me where he was like, Sabine barely could just move a lightsaber. How the heck is she going to chuck me across over there?
That's how I felt.
Because when I
much
saw
of that does Ezra even know? I don't know. And if that's the case, why did he just throw her?
I thought he should have thrown her, quite honestly.
Yeah, like her go first, or she's a Mandalorian. Where's her jetpack?
That's what I said. I said to Sarah, I said, "Where the heck is her jetpack?"
That'd be real nice for this scene, but I guess the writing went another direction.
Unfortunately, they don't fly now. Mandalorians no more.
No.
She's been grounded.
Yeah, literally. So yeah, she chucks Ezra up to Thrawn's ship, and
he kind of makes it. He's hanging, right? It's a classic. Troopers have to look over the edge, and
he does the little Obi-Wan Kenobi thing, and like Force pulls himself up and takes care of those dudes. Sabine she thinks about jumping after him too, but we get a little surprise sequence with Ahsoka where it seems like she has herself backed into a corner with Morgan and all the troopers, and then Sabine shows up and joins in the mix. So Sabine does not leave with Ezra. So Ezra is the only one of our group that made it onto Thrawn's ship.
Yep.
The last little piece that we get from Ezra before we talk about the rest of Ahsoka and Sabine, when Ezra takes out those guards, he gets a little bright idea, and he, pulls away one of the stormtroopers' bodies, which kind of foreshadows what's going to happen later on.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an Ezra thing to do.
Yeah, anyone who's seen Rebels knows what he's about to do next. Well, kind of. He's gonna put the suit on, but I guess. See, I thought he was gonna do more stuff on the ship, but he just got out of there.
It went right over my head. I thought he was just hiding the body.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Well, also don't forget, like, he, as a kid, like, even partook in some of the academy stuff. So, because I had thought, like, when he picked up the comm link, when he was going to respond back, is he going to sound ridiculous, or is he going to kind of remember back, like, oh, this is like the cadence of how they talk, kind of.
Oh yeah.
And was able to sound like a trooper.
Yeah.
So yeah, he does do that, and it does pay off.
Yep.
So I guess back to Sabine and Ahsoka. The big takeaway here, and honestly, I was a bit disappointed with this, is that Ahsoka ends up killing Morgan. So even though Morgan gets this amazing promotion at the beginning of the episode, she is killed off right away. What did you guys feel about that?
I kind of thought that was gonna happen. Like, I kind of thought one of the bad Jedi / enemies would be taken out, like not Thrawn. Like, I was very in the camp that I thought Thrawn was not going to be dealt with by the end of this finale. I don't know if you guys felt the same way or not, but I certainly felt like he was going to continue on to something else, like another project.
Oh, definitely. I thought he was going to do something, and we'll get there.
Yeah. So I was kind of expecting somebody to go down. Now, in my mind, it was going to be Baylan, just because we all know what happened to the actor. Rest in peace. That's he's just been killing it in everything, every episode so far. And we actually don't get, we don't get any Baylan really or Shin. We're actually, like, I was kind of waiting for the scenes to come up the whole time this episode, and it never happens, and it never happens, and it never happens until after, like, we see Thrawn's ship blast off back to the galaxy we know.
Yeah, at that point we kind of do a little rendition of what's this character doing? What's this character doing? What's this character doing? And we go through like 6 different characters in like 5 minutes, barely flashing anything for any of them.
And that's when I knew. I was like, oh my God, this is not gonna, in my opinion, it's not gonna stick the landing because of what was going on with the back and forth with the characters and how fast things are going, because it was making me think this is the end of the episode. But yeah, we get a little bit for Shin. She goes back to those red people. I don't remember what they were called, if they were called anything.
Aren't they the Marauders?
Yeah, just Marauders, bandits. They were just people.
So she goes back there and raises her lightsaber, probably trying to be accepted, maybe as their leader, or at least just part of their group. Baylan's is a little more interesting, because we see him up on some hills, but as the camera pans out, we can see behind Austin there. We get this shot of, and it reminded me a lot of Lord of the Rings, quite honestly, because they have similar statues. But the significance of these characters is pretty big with Filoni, right?
Did you know? Yeah, did you know what it was instantly? Like, I think the first shot you see is like just a little beard, and then Baylan's like much closer to it. But as he kind of like walks out onto the ledge, like, did you know what it was right away?
No. I was stuck on the Lord of the Rings thing, and then when I saw who the person was, that's when it clicked for me.
See, I think I like saw the beard, and I was like, no way. Like, this is what I think it is. And sure enough, this is another Clone Wars reference / continuation. This figure and this figure And this figure that used to be here, but is not currently here,
think
are
you have that
all
backwards.
like Force gods essentially from the Clone Wars, the Mortis gods. Um, so apparently they must have some connection to this planet as well, and they've got some kind of power that Balin seems to be after.
Yeah. So in case you guys don't know, because we didn't actually say who these people were. So the guy in the middle is like the father of the Force. The person to his side, where we actually see a being, is the sun, which is representative of the dark side, and then the one that's kind of missing their head, that is supposed to be the daughter of the Force, and she represents the light side. Um, Interesting that her head is missing. I kind of wonder if the connection is that these beings had an issue with maybe the Night Sisters, because we all know that this planet has. Was it this planet that has the ridiculous? No, it was the other one. That had the crazy force sensitivity stuff. But maybe in this planet, they had an issue with the Night Sisters or something. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
find it weird that the light side one is the one that's missing.
Yeah. I so there's a connection. Yeah, I didn't want to go through like a full Clone Wars recap because I honestly don't remember all the details all that well. Um, but yeah, basically in this arc of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka actually like dies in those episodes, like actually dies for a second. But the daughter kind of gives her life force to Ahsoka basically to bring her back to life. So like Ahsoka's already died once, right? And then
Died before.
right. And then in Rebels, she fights Darth Vader, and we're supposed to assume she dies again there. But then, of course, Ezra saves her by finding this Jedi temple on Lothal and getting into the world between worlds, and he pulls her away from being killed there, so she lives this time. And now in this series, on the other planet, we kind of see her get, you know, knocked off a cliff into the ocean, and she um, is still around and kicking. Um, the Force brings her back to life or something. But basically, I think that's kind of how she survived, is because she has a bit of that light side of the Force, like that life force energy from the daughter. I think that kind of like Ahsoka's not just a regular Jedi anymore. Uh, I guess is where I'm going with this. But I'm sorry, this has all been very long-winded. Why is the statue missing? Because Ahsoka represents the daughter, because Ahsoka has like that side of the Force now. That's where I was going with that.
It's definitely an interesting mindset. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I didn't even like at first I kind of thought the daughter was just straight up missing. But yeah, she's there, just the head of the statue's gone. But
Yeah. But speaking of Ahsoka, so what's going on with her? We kind of talked about Shin and Balin. What's going on with Ahsoka and Sabine at the very end? So they try to follow Thrawn's ship, but Thrawn's ship jumps into hyperspace and kind of knocks Ahsoka's ship backwards into some weird like energy wave.
mhm.
There's nowhere for them to really go because they need to repair their ship for like a third time this episode. So they come back to the planet and go to those weird turtle hermit people creatures. And we're kind of left to think that they're like settling on the island or on the planet there with them. You know, Ahsoka's talking to Sabine about how she's like proud of her that she helped get Ezra home and like that she did the right thing. And there's like no talk of any kind of plan of they're gonna get back or if this is just where they're gonna stay. Like it seems like they're kind of settling with the community, which to me maybe this is a little too simple, but I'm thinking like, why aren't you just riding the whale's mouth back to your normal hometown, just
Mhm.
like the same way that Ahsoka got here?
Yeah. And I think that's probably what they will do, unless, I mean, we can get to like that part later, like what we think is going to happen with these characters the next time we see them. But that's got to be the, I mean, Thrawn told them they're going to be stranded. So how else would they get back if it wasn't the whales again? Um,
Which I guess
how they're going to get in
if they're
contact with the whales?
yeah, if they're doing the whale thing again, they gotta have somehow have the convenience of finding them again in their migration paths, and who knows how often they do that.
Yeah, they made it sound like they don't like migrate here frequently. Like, I think they say like this is like the planet they go to die or something. So,
Yeah, hence the graveyard.
Yeah.
Um,
Jeremy, do you want to cover? I think the only character left is, or no, we got. Where did Thrawn go, and where did Ezra go?
so Ezra was able. I don't know how this is possible, but Ezra stole a ship and deserted Thrawn's ship, and then made it back to the rebels.
the New
Like
Republic fleet.
seeing Hera and all of them. He does arrive in one of those stormtrooper outfits, the one that he stole, and so people were a little hesitant at first, but then he took his helmet off, and then him and Hera met eye to eye. I'm not too sure how he was able to get away. It sounds like something that wasn't super plausible. But also, like, if that ship happens to have a tracker, they're gonna get found very easily by Thrawn. So
Hey, that sounds like a good movie.
could be, could be.
How did he know where the rebel base was? Or it's not a rebel base anymore because they're not the rebels. It's the New Republic.
Fleet.
But like, how did he know that this is exactly where Hera and Chopper are?
That's a great question. We don't get any answers.
No, he just shows up.
He just shows up, and once again, we see two characters who should have an emotional moment, and they just stare at each other.
Uh, it took him so long to take his helmet
Like-
off too. Like you'd think he would have taken his helmet off the second he walked off that ship.
Like, I do kind of give Hera a pass because I know like that's a lot of prosthetics involved and makeup to be a green Twi'lek or whatever. I think that's the alien.
Yep.
Anyway, I give her a little bit of a pass, but I think Ezra, like, I think that actor could have been like a little bit, and especially since like he's made it home without Sabine and Ahsoka, so they've traded one Jedi for two Jedi. Like in my mind, like this is not a fair trade deal. Like now they are stranded, and Ezra and Thrawn are back. Like what is this deal?
Yeah, I didn't like that twist either. Oh, I was gonna say, I just thought of, I think what might have been a better way for Ezra. Like Ezra is, in my opinion, he's kind of like the Aladdin of Star Wars. He's done a lot of weird illegal things. I think it would have been hilarious if he would have done something that would have upset the New Republic, and he would have gotten like pulled over like Mando did, and then he would have been able to just go right to him instead of miraculously finding them in the middle of space.
Yeah, like there's a lot of ways they could have done that scene, and they went for like do like the sentimental moment, and it just didn't land for me.
Right.
Which is
Same.
unfortunate.
Well, if
But
you think of like Hera's character from Rebels, if not, I know not everybody has seen that, but if you think about like her character, I feel like she would have been a lot more loving towards Ezra, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're back, and like run and hug,
yeah, like a tear, give me anything. Like I got more feels going on from him doing a little pat on Chopper's robot head than I did that 10-second stare from Hera and Ezra. But it is what it
I
is.
feel that.
Yeah. There is one more character that, we see his payoff, which is Thrawn. And he is not heading towards the New Republic, which is interesting because, we had been wondering if he was going to try to make a statement with the New Republic. And instead, he is heading towards Dathomir with the Night Sisters and all of their luggage that they loaded onto his ship. And so my guess is that maybe they are going to unload that stuff on the planet, do whatever ceremony they need, and then he will finally have his army for the Imperial remnants to go up against the New Republic.
You think the army's for him? That's not just him doing his part of the deal for the Night Sisters?
I mean, I would wonder what else he would use.
Well, let's think about this too.
Right.
The only people who know where the Empire sympathizers are would have been Morgan, who's dead, or Balin or Shin, who aren't here. So where else is he gonna go? Because he doesn't know anybody. Not anymore.
Yeah, well, probably not anymore, but I think he might have some contacts or something. 'Cause
Well,
we see in Mando, right?
I was just about to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's there's a group in Mando of like Imperial remnants. And Thrawn does get name dropped in their meeting, so he probably has connections to some of them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see like how big his forces end up being combined once whatever the next thing is. We have no idea.
So we've covered pretty much the episode. So here's one of my questions, and I thought this was kind of dumb. Maybe it's just because I misinterpreted. But there's the point where Thrawn, because remember, there's really no sense of urgency going on here between either of them, in my opinion. Thrawn is pretty calm and collected about, leaving the planet whenever he feels like it. And then Ahsoka and all of them don't really have much urgency to leave. But Thrawn mentions that everything is loaded, everything's ready to go. And he still waits. He waits a little bit longer. He mentions something about Ahsoka and all them and the Jedi, and he says, well, we need to wait a little bit longer. I'm just thinking,
he needed Morgan to buy him some time, but for what?
Right, for what?
Yeah, they it seemed like everything was loaded, and then there was this sequence of events that all could have happened simultaneously, but because they did one by one, it's because they had to take the space ring out of high orbit, bring it down to the planet. They didn't show any of this, but then their ship had to slowly beep, 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 and dock with it and get, connected with the ring. So that's what took so long. But yeah, why did they call that sooner if they knew they were almost done with the, we're almost done with our thing. We got this loading bar going on.
Yeah, because I would have, if I was Thrawn, I would have been like, okay, like you said, once that thing was almost done and completed, get that ring going. It's better for us to leave them behind than to risk bringing them back because they could be on our way later on. Yep. So I thought it was really weird to not have efficiency in mind. Instead, it was just, what can I do to lollygag here in the finale and then eventually make it back?
Yeah, it was kind of like, how many hoops can I make the Jedi jump through before I give them a chance to ruin my plans?
Right.
One thing that I wasn't a particular fan of for this being the finale is I feel like we really didn't get any answers for what happened to anybody. Like, Ahsoka and Sabine are still stuck on the planet. How are they going to get off? Balin's in front of the statue. What's he going to do with it? Why is Thrawn going to Dathomir? So you got all these open loose ends, and yet I feel like there's no cliffhanger. Like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for what happens next. How long until the next season? I'm just like, oh, okay. Like the level of excitement just isn't there for all these things. I feel like there needs to be something more. There was like a lack of drama, I guess, is more or less what I'm trying to get at.
You know what's funny? My excitement is almost in the exact same place it was the last time I saw Ahsoka show up out of nowhere on Mandalorian. And we got one episode with Ahsoka. It was amazing. And then she name drops Thrawn, and we're like, Thrawn, that's crazy. I can't wait for Thrawn to show up. I bet the next thing we see is going to be so cool. Um, and we're still kind of in the same spot where I'm just kind of generally excited for what's coming next. But it is funny that we've gone through this whole show and we've kind of done a 180, 360. We've done a circle. We're back in the same spot.
Like a dog chasing its tail. Like you almost got it.
It's poetic, I guess. I don't know. Oh, and I was gonna say this earlier, but I thought Shin was still looking for camaraderie of some sort. Like I thought she was either gonna go back to um, Thrawn and try and join up with them, or I thought she was gonna go try and find Balin and be like, "Hey, what are you doing here?"
Yeah, wouldn't it have been so, I guess, dramatic is probably the best word to describe it, although I feel funny because I just said that. But like, I feel like we should have had a scene of her going back to that Imperial base or whatever you want to call it, where the Night Sisters were, like that home base. She
Yep.
should have gone back there and then seen it destroyed and been like, what the heck just happened here? Because I was supposed to get on that ship and now everything's gone.
Yeah, betrayed again. Yes, there's see, they just I'm so bothered by what they did with those two characters in this finale. It just baffles me that they kept them strung along this whole time and didn't use them at all in the finale.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we knew Thrawn was gonna leave him behind, but they didn't know that, you know?
right, the show Ahsoka, you know, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I like Sarah, what you were saying about, if she went back and saw things destroyed. I mean, I think all of us are looking for what would be that carrot to make us want to see the next season. I mean, she could have went and saw something that, like a computer that was left open that had their plans of what was in the caskets, or what's Thrawn's next step. Or she could have went after Balin and been upset with him and possibly killed him, and then seen, her growing within the dark side, and maybe she's going to end up going back after Sabine. Like, there's so many things that they could have done to at least give us some sort of interest in season. I have no interest right now, which is unfortunate because, like, I have no clue of what could be happening. I half wonder, because I think the next show to come out is Skeleton Crew, and then maybe the Acolyte, and then I don't know after that whether it's going to
Yeah,
be Mando or Ahsoka.
well, and Acolyte's like a completely different time frame. Like that's right. Am I
Correct.
crazy? Okay. Yeah, and then Skeleton Crew is around the time frame we know.
Right. So, like, is the Skeleton Crew going to give us some sort of notion of what's going
I
on? You know?
Yeah, I was wondering if the Skeleton Crew was supposed to be related to this crew that we know, the Ghost Crew. I was wondering that is like that's always something that's been kind of on my mind when they kind of when I kind of heard the first whispers about what that show was supposed to be.
There's two things I know about that show. One, they say it's like the Goonies of Star Wars. And two, they said the bad guy is supposed to be that, like, grassy Davy Jones looking dude from The
Oh, the
Mandalorian.
pirate guy?
Yeah. So where this is in the timeline, I'm not too sure. Um, but I don't think Thrawn would be back at that point. At least not it like maybe not the beginning of the show. Maybe it ends with a little bit more of what's going on with Thrawn, but
Yeah, maybe connect some of the pieces or something.
yeah.
That's the thing with Star Wars right now is that it is far more connected than any like Marvel thing to any other Marvel thing that's not with the same like name. Like Iron Man is obviously more closely to Iron Man 2, but when you compare like Iron Man and Thor, like yeah, they're the same world, but the universes aren't that connected. Where like I feel like the next Star Wars thing we see, as long as it's around the same time frame, is going to have to kind of connect some of the pieces, connect some of the dots. But maybe I'm crazy.
It's weird to me how, we have things like Rebels or Clone Wars where it's kind of describing a time period and it does follow like a central character base, but at the same time, right now, we're in kind of a general time zone era, not time zone, but just general time era of like, got Mando, got Book of Boba, Ahsoka, potentially Skeleton Crew. These are all things that are kind of in like the same time, but they're all just onesie twosie seasons of things that are happening. And it's kind of almost like they should be a cohesive show, but just like this season we're gonna focus on Boba, and then this season we're gonna focus on Ahsoka. Like it's kind of strange how they're choosing to have so many just mini series split instead of having it be one show.
Yeah, that is true. They do. I mean, they don't all have the same like tones and everything. For me, but I know what you're saying. How they, because I think they've filmed them all very similarly too. With the volume, big electric screens that they have and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to give them like a similar feel at least. But yeah, that's I mean, you're you're on something. These could all be like, you know,
So here's something kind of interesting because I looked this up because of what you said, Austin, about Thrawn and anticipation. That episode where he was name dropped by Ahsoka came out in November of 2020. And so we wait almost 3 years and we finally get this live action Thrawn. Is this what you wanted? Are we gonna have to wait another 1 to 2?
I'm like 85% yes. I just want to know a little bit more. Give me like just this much more of his plan. Like they're on Dathomir, they have all these presumably caskets. So we just saw them bring people back to life. That was something that got brought up earlier in an earlier episode. He said death is like not a thing for Jedi or witches. So I think he's kind of alluding to the plan that way, that they're trying to bring these Dathomir people, witches, somebody back to life.
Yeah. I'm
What
I'm curious to see where they go with that.
what if
I
they're
think
all like ball, like just like hundreds of them?
Maul.
Yeah, just
Oh,
like
I,
Zabraks, like with the
I thought I heard you say bald.
Maul. No,
I was
Darth
like,
Maul.
what?
Yeah, like
Um,
just hundreds of Zabraks with the.
could be. I mean, they do that in um Fallen Order in the video game when you go to Dathomir. A lot of them have that like green hazy eyes, because one of the characters, Marin, I think that's her name. Uh, in the game, she explains to you like uh, Grievous and all of them, and the Jedi, which she uh misinterprets what's going on there because she hates the Jedi because she saw a lightsaber and thought that they slaughtered all their people, but she was wrong about that. But she goes into detail about how there's like nobody on the planet because they were all slaughtered, and there's only like a couple people there, and the rest of them are basically all brought to life through magic. So I could see them messing around with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Would
That
you would you describe Thrawn as aggressive in like this episode in particular?
Well, I would tell you, I'm just going to be blunt. I thought their portrayal of Thrawn in live action was disappointing in comparison to Rebels. because I remember watching Rebels with you, Sarah, and thinking like there was these different things that he was doing, and then they were like super smart, and his interpretations of things were great. Like the scene where they know that there's somebody sabotaging their tech, and he's just like, you
He
built this
just
bike.
knows. Yeah.
Yeah, like he did some clever things, and then in this show he's just like, I know you see it as a loss, but it's really a victory. Like, there's really nothing that's happening that he is being smart about,
Yeah.
except for just throwing in the undead to delay more and more time.
Yeah. The cleverness was like, oh, our ties are dispatched. And the him being clever about it was him saying like, oh yeah, I assume they've been destroyed. Like just because we lost contact with them, assume they've been destroyed. Like,
The reason why
or
I ask is this episode is called The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, right? Well, the definition of a warlord is a military commander, especially an aggressive one. I
I
don't
would
know that that really describes anybody.
I would not say he was aggressive. I would say that he was a delayer. That's all he did.
yeah, he was just tactically stalling.
I want to see him like whenever they do end up him in the New Republic meeting. I hope that they just show him slaughtering different fleets and whatnot. Because I feel like if you are watching this show and you haven't seen Rebels, you haven't watched or read the books, or you have like no idea who this dude is, but everybody's like, oh my god, if this dude comes, it's over. I don't think they showed enough in this show to, actually give that vibe. It's like if I feel like if someone walked up to him, they could flick him in the head and he'd fall over. Like there's nothing terrifying of him besides his eyeballs.
Used to be menacing, and I don't feel like he really is anymore.
Yeah, I know what you guys are saying. Like,
And
um,
almost the same could be said for Ezra. Not necessarily menacing, but like he used to have a backbone and now he's like a Buddha or a Buddhist.
hmm,
Well, he was alone for many years, so
yeah,
maybe that's
His
why.
story is different. My point is just that they both changed a lot.
yeah. Thrawn,
Not that there's anything wrong with Buddhists before I move on from that. I just
yeah, of
it's
course not,
different.
of course not. He, yeah, I don't know. In Rebels, he's always one step ahead of them. To the very end, basically until, yeah, he gets zipped away to where we see him here. Um, but he didn't give me the same vibes in this show. He gave me like chills like in the Rebels. Like, I don't know. This guy was he meant business. Uh, but um in this show he kind of, I don't know. Ahsoka kept getting the better of him somehow. Like, um everything he throws at him, it just slows him down. That's it. Um, yeah, it's not like he knew he has a backup plan for the backup plan. That's kind of what I expect from him. But it's not backup plan after backup plan. It's just tactically stalling, like we kind of said earlier. Um, so I mean, he did accomplish his plan. I mean, they zipped away. They got all their cargo. So we still kind of have to. I feel like I'm judging him too early because we haven't even seen like what they're really trying to do. You know. Um, but for me right now, it's not quite the Thrawn I was hoping for.
They're probably saving it for the big bucks, like for the movie that will eventually come out. Um, I just think it's a little unfortunate. Like they put a lot of money into these episodes. Let's not disregard that. Like between 10 and 20 million per episode, kind of a thing. Um, but I do think, you have to keep the integrity of your story and your characters. And I feel like this wasn't quite it. unfortunately.
Yeah. There was one thing, kind of a big deal we didn't mention. What did you think about Force Ghost Anakin?
Oh yeah. So at the end, Ahsoka, is kind of looking off in the distance, and Sabine doesn't really notice what she's doing, and then we find out that she's, looking at Force Ghost Anakin, kind of like the end of Return of the Jedi in a way, when Luke looks at, you know, his previous mentors. Um, I thought it was okay. I thought he looked a little funny, quite honestly. Like visually, it didn't look quite right, but I don't know. I thought it was okay. I felt like it wasn't super necessary. It didn't add
Yeah,
anything for me, if that's what you're getting at.
I felt very similar. Like in that moment, I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel about it. Like, why is he appearing now when everything was just in such a weird, like in Return of the Jedi, the Force Ghost thing happens at the end of the day when the day is saved, right? The day is not saved here. In fact, they've almost all but failed their mission only to get Ezra out of there. That's basically the only uh good thing going for him, really, I guess, at this point. Right? Am I crazy? I don't know.
No, I think
It
you're
just
right.
felt out of it just felt a little out of place, you know. It wasn't that I was like mad about it or anything.
I think they were trying to go for, like, if Hayden Christensen hadn't been in the show at all before this episode, I think it would have hit a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Because like at the end of Mando season 2, when Luke came out, everybody went crazy. And I think they needed something like that to top off this episode. Again, giving us that carrot of what to expect for in the future. But because we had seen him plenty of times before in this show, I think it really just missed the mark.
Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be more like they talked so much about Jedi apprentice and master relationships, They in this episode specifically, they talked about Kanan and Ezra, they've talked about Sabine with Ahsoka, and they've talked about Ahsoka with Anakin. And so I think this was kind of their way of wrapping things up of Ahsoka, described why she wasn't upset with Sabine for the choices that she made because that's how Anakin treated her when she was a Padawan. And so it's kind of like Ahsoka saying, I'm proud of you for getting Ezra home, and him saying, I'm proud of Ahsoka for becoming a master that she was meant to be, or something like
Yeah.
that. I think
Absolutely.
that's more or less what it was trying to do, even though he didn't say anything. That's kind of the vibe that I took from it.
Which is interesting because I remember when Ahsoka was telling Sabine that stuff, I was thinking to myself, like, season 7 of Clone Wars, I get you. And I'm thinking, like, Sarah doesn't understand because she hasn't seen it yet. Because we actually see, like, how does Anakin, stick up for her when everybody else would not? Because that's what she says. He stood by my side when everybody else wouldn't. And we see what that actually is in season 7 of Clone Wars, which leads eventually to her leaving all of them. Probably for the best, because we all know how that goes down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I like that little piece of dialogue, but as far as Anakin appearing as a Force ghost, I can hear and respect what Sarah is saying, but I don't know if it, you know, makes it any better for me, kind of a thing. Like, I still think it's kind of weird that he showed up at the end, but it is
Yeah,
what
I
it
don't
is.
think it was necessary, but that's kind of my interpretation of it.
Yeah. Was there anything else you guys wanted to mention? We are currently longer than the episode itself.
Only thing is just I am nervous about where we're going next because
Fair.
um Balin Skull's story is not yet over, not yet told to its fruition. Because at the end of this, he's standing on a mountaintop.
He's
So
heading to Mordor. What are you talking about?
that's not exactly the end of someone's story. So, presumably, Ahsoka and Sabine are still on the planet. Shin and Balin are still on the planet. They could all meet up again. The characters, they'd have to like recast them or something, obviously. Um, but I just don't know what they're gonna do with that. It seems like that might be. I mean, maybe that's their way back. Maybe that's their way off the planet. Maybe this power. Maybe it's like another Jedi temple or something. And maybe it's got a way home somehow.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you as far as uncertain, nervous. Like, I feel like this show came out very strong. And
Yeah.
then, that made our expectations for the finale that much higher. And they really didn't have any closure to hardly anybody. I mean, yeah, Sabine and Ahsoka are left behind. Balin and Shin are on that same planet, so maybe they will interact again at some point. The only thing I had wondered is, something's calling out to Balin. We remember that from previous episodes. Maybe there's something on this planet that, we still haven't seen yet that might end up being big down the line. Maybe there is a force entity on the planet that is big and important because, they were all talking about being afraid of what's on the planet too. They want to get the heck out of there. So I hope someday we get to see what he was actually looking for and what was calling out to him. But unfortunately, we don't have that answer right now.
Yep. So we do know there's a movie somewhere down the line that this will inevitably lead into, but we don't know what's in between now and then.
Something tells me we get one more season of Mando, one more season of Ahsoka, and like you said, 2026, head towards the movie.
Well,
but yeah,
it's been a good eight episodes overall. I might watch it all back here in the next couple of days or something.
I have
or the next
some
week.
I have some friends and students that were waiting so they could binge the whole thing through. So I'm curious to see what they end up saying, in comparison to how we all felt. But yeah, so that was our discussion on the season finale for Ahsoka. We got some hopes for some cool things in the future, but I could probably say that all three of us are a little anxious, a little possibly worried of where things are heading. But we'll just have to wait and see. I still kind of feel like in Dave Filoni we trust him and Favreau. So we'll just have to see what they come up with and what exciting things we have in the future. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when other Star Wars videos drop. Clearly this show is over, so we won't have some episode discussions until the next show comes out, which I think will be Skeleton Crew. I would bet money that one's coming out probably early 2024. I don't think it's coming out this year. But we'll have to see. Maybe we'll get surprised. Drops a like if you like the video and drops a comment letting us know what your thoughts were on the season finale. We'll probably have a discussion on the series as a whole in a future Shoot the Sheev, so stick around for that. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.